Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Let's just do the introductions and that way we use the time productively. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the European Polar Board. We are an independent organization currently based in The Hague, and we are co-hosting this webinar for the ICARP IV process. I'll hand over the microphone to my colleague Nina, who's leading this project, and she'll take you through what the ICARP IV process is, and then hand over to the co-chairs of this RPT3 for the webinar. I wish you all the best, and go for it, Nina.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for this RPT3 introductory webinar. So just a couple of words about the ICARP IV process. The International Arctic Science Committee, IASC, in cooperation with many partners worldwide, is coordinating a multi-year planning process for the 4th International Conference on Arctic Research Planning. It lasts from 2022 to 2026 and engages Arctic researchers, indigenous peoples, policymakers, residents, and stakeholders from around the world to discuss the state of Arctic science and the place that Arctic occupies in global systems and affairs. So between 2024 and 2025, the ICARP International Steering Committee convened 7 research priority teams that will work with the input provided through the ICARP IV community engagement process to first define the knowledge gaps and research priorities for their topic area, and also identify and suggest opportunities to enhance synergies across existing and potential research plans. So I would like to welcome the co-chairs of the RPT3, Understanding the Dynamics and Resilience of Arctic Social Ecological Systems to Foster Sustainable Futures. So here today are Jackie Dawson from ArcticNet and University of Ottawa, Heather Sauyaq Jane Gordon from Sauyaq Solutions in the US, and Varvara Korkina Williams from Institute of Arctic Studies at Dartmouth College. So I'm giving the floor to our co-chairs who will start with the presentation, and we also have a Q&A box available for you throughout the webinar for your comments and questions. There's also a chat box, so please don't hesitate to leave your questions and comments, and we will take them after the presentation. Okay, thank you, and I'm giving the floor to our co-chairs.
If I may interrupt, I just wanted to add that this webinar is being recorded, and this will be uploaded to both the EPB YouTube channel and also the ICARP YouTube channel for further reference for everyone. So thanks a lot, and I apologize for interrupting.
All right, as Jackie pulls that up, I'm going to be kicking it off for everyone. We'll introduce ourselves shortly. I just want to say, if you want to drop any info about yourself, who you are, where you're calling in from, into the chat, it might help us moderate a discussion at the end. So you're welcome to do that. So yes, we are ICARP Research Priority 3 team working on developing sustainable futures in the Arctic. You can go to the next one. Today we're going to introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about what is going on with ICARP, what our task is, and then really introduce you, take a little bit of time to introduce you to what we did so far. And then our next steps in our methodology, our approach, because that will kind of help guide our discussion. And then, like everybody has said, you're welcome to jump into the chat or a question, and we can even unmute you at the end as well. You can go one more. Okay, I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Heather Sauyaq Jean Gordon. I am a Inupiaq. That's an Indigenous person from the Arctic in Alaska. I am a co-chair on RPT3. I am a consultant through Sauyaq Solutions. I'm also affiliated faculty at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I'm currently a Fulbright Arctic Scholar as well. My work really does center around Indigenous approaches to sustainability and what that means for our communities, looking at really that connected perspective between humans and the natural world. Varvara?
As in everyone, No, thank you so much, Heather. And I'm Varvara. I'm a Commodity Scholar and the Arctic Innovation Fellow at the Institute of Arctic Studies at Dartmouth College. And I'm a co-lead yeah, in the Initiative Indigenous Coordinating Group at the ICARP IV and project manager for Indigenizing the Arctic Research, which is a project we launched to bring more Indigenous voices to ICARP IV. And here we are. So having two Indigenous co-chairs. Isn't it awesome?
Okay, Jackie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am calling in from the traditional territory of Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And I am a settler, non-Indigenous co-chair, but a huge supporter of inclusion of all people and all knowledge in our scientific endeavors. And I'm at the University of Ottawa, and most of my work is around climate change and understanding the sort of solutions-based science on what we can do with the cascading impacts and risks of climate change in the Arctic. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Let's go to the next slide. We just wanted to tell you a little bit about our RPT team members. We really wanted to have an inclusive, broad approach, but also have opportunity for people to identify their different backgrounds to make sure that we have an equitable discussion as well that is recognizing all these different backgrounds and is appropriate for everybody's different backgrounds, as well as highlighting and lifting up underrepresented and minoritized groups within our RPT working group. So you can see here that we have a few different gender identities, almost half and half of those that identify as she, her, and he, him. 12% Indigenous is actually pretty good for a working group. 2 Indigenous co-leads is also good. They did make an effort in ICARP this year to have 1 Indigenous co-lead with every group. We have different identities with LGBTQ+, as well as non. And then we have people who identified as a visible minority, people who were unsure of that, and then also people who did not consider themselves a visible minority, to just help us, have ethical discussions. And then we have people from a lot of different countries, not only what would be considered, the Arctic Council countries, but a bit of a broader representation in Europe as well, and Japan. Next. So I want to talk a little bit, I'll hand this to Varvara to talk a little bit about the ICARP overall process, and then I'll get into how we started tackling it at Arctic Science Summit Week, Scotland.
ICARP, what ICARP team wanted, and I think that we are going within this. ICARP ICARP IV is a process, so it's not only ICARP conference in 2025, and I think that research priority teams is a part of this process, and it started in 2022. We have formed international steering committee, and with the creating engagement and communication plan. So now we have an international steering committee, and co-chaired by Henry and Daly. In 2023, seeking community input, I think that in-person engagement, online engagement, and I think that we are still seeking an input, and it's both a process of defining research priorities and coming back and forth with us. So, and phase 3, now we are in that phase. Research priority teams work together with our members and outreach to communities. We will have a workshop and retreat with all co-chairs and the International Steering Committee coming up in a couple of weeks in Akureyri in Iceland, drafting of research priorities and their implementation plans. So our team plans to come back to our RPT members and communities and come back with this update and hear your feedback. And this is what we, three of us discussed, that we really want to have your input most and have as much voices as we can get. And yes, so 2025 consulting on priorities, again coming back to you and figure it out if that's true to what we collected and what we created is a true a reflection or not. And then we will have a ICARP conference, ICARP IV conference during Arctic Science Summit Week in 2025 in Boulder, in Colorado. And if you are still planning to submit your abstracts, well, today is a deadline, second deadline, which is very important. But I think that you still can submit by the end of the day in the United States. And after that, we will have a final report in 2026 and an implementation plan. So I want to say that ICARP process is open and accessible for all. So you can do it through website and submit your survey, or you can reach out to us and we also can get your, I don't know, white papers or abstracts if you don't want to do survey, and we are open to hear and adopt suggestions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Varvara. Okay, we're going to go a little bit over the timeline, and what we're going to start with is Arctic Science Summit Week that was held in Edinburgh this last spring. Yes, if you can jump to the next one. Welcome, everybody. Is it not advancing? Okay, there we go. Okay, so the Arctic Science Summit Week, we ended up doing a hybrid event. There was so many people that ended up joining us online. So I was an online moderator. I wasn't able to get there in person, and it actually worked out perfect because we had such an online attendance and people wanting to participate. And then Jackie was facilitating the in-person, which was also very large. We do not put any restrictions on participation. We don't do closed door meetings. So I think at some point we had like 30 people sitting on the ground against the wall, much bigger than our room was designed for. But it got some great discussion and different perspectives. We really worked at looking at the original title, which is different from the title we ended up with. It wasn't what we considered as inclusive. It also had a little bit of a deficit approach. It was a title that came out of the previous process a number of years ago, and science moves forward and terminology changes as things adapt, and so we adapted with it and we modified our title to what you have today. We also modified our description to be a little bit more inclusive of sustainability from human and environment perspectives and how those two aspects relate with one another. At this meeting, so Jackie and I had talked a bit before the meeting about what might be a methodology for us to get, an equitable way and approach for people to have input to what the next research priorities should be. Because obviously not everybody could come to Scotland or jump online with the time changes. Not everybody is going to be able to come to Boulder either. We also didn't feel that just doing a lit review on our own or drawing on existing priorities was really the most appropriate since ours is really about community priorities and people living in the Arctic. So Jackie's going to talk a little bit more about the methodology we ended up with, but we had discussed an option, we presented it to the group, and when the group agreed to use the Delphi approach, we then ended up really breaking down what that looks like. People broke into different teams for each of the different tasks to take responsibility, for example, for the title or the paragraph, or for developing the first survey. And we've really tried to take a model of nobody gets told what to do. If people are able, with the time and the commitments they have, if they signed up for something, if they're able to join it, that's great. If they're not, we don't cut them off from anything at all. So we're very open to anybody who wants to jump in. You're still welcome to join our RPT if this is your area and you just haven't been able to participate thus far. And so what we've been trying to do is really review what is out there, looking at the previous ICARP priorities, as well as identifying the different priorities that have been put out by Indigenous organizations, by Arctic communities, by Arctic countries. There's quite a lot of priorities that already exist. And so we have a team that's working on a literature review. And we have since realized that, of course, the other RPTs are doing this as well. So we're now trying to combine efforts so we don't overlap and be doing the same things with the amount of labor that it ends up taking. And we are, keeping everybody informed. I have been a regular email communicator thus far. If you want to get on our email list, just shoot one of us a message and Gerlis will help us with that. You can go to the next one, Jackie. And really what we're seeking to do is develop research priorities for the next decade in a way that includes both these high-level perspectives of many of the existing priorities, but finds a way to drill down to community involvement. And so we've had a lot of discussions around how a lot of the ICARP work is done in English, a lot of the ICARP work is done in North America, and we were recently able to add Varvara as a third co-lead to help support and to also really help broaden inclusion, which has been really important to us. Am I handing over to you, Jackie, now? I think so.
I think so. Thanks, Heather. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of where we got to in Scotland, and we all agreed on the approach we're going to take. And I guess I want to start by saying how important this process is. And Varvara reminded us actually in our pre-session one of the reasons why this is so important, other than inclusion and ensuring everybody has a say. Another reason is that these research priorities really set the future direction of our world for the next 5 to 10 years. So it's really important that we make sure that we are including discovery-based science, solutions-based science, community-driven science. And so because of that, and because of our kind of the values and ethics that we chose to kind of follow in our group, we decided to do some primary approach to gathering information. So as Heather said, we're looking at everything that exists for our RPT, but we're also going to engage in what's called a Delphi approach to gathering information. So I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but I've highlighted here the most important aspects of this approach. The whole idea is it's this group-oriented idea generating strategy or approach that aims to uncover consensus. And that's really important, is where is there consensus or a lack of consensus on what are the priorities? Because the whole definition of priorities is, what are the most sort of pressing things that are feasible to implement over the next while. And so we are tasked with prioritizing. And part of prioritizing is ensuring consensus in the community. Now, it doesn't mean we have to have 100% consensus. That's almost impossible. But it's certainly something that we want to consider, and this method allows for that. The other reason that the method is appealing is it enables anonymous submissions. So you get a real wide range of responses from people who may or may not feel comfortable in a group setting. And we make sure we have group settings as well as this approach so that we can get the most answers as we possibly can. So it's meant to try to take a bit of fear from judgment. If you have less popular ideas, these ideas can still be included in this approach. So this is as scientists, I love tables and graphs and things. So this is basically the chart, the table or the figure of our approach. We will be turning this into a report for ICARP, but as a group, we'll also publish the results through journal articles and other means. But essentially, there's different rounds. We've already started engaging in round 1, which was meeting the group, identifying our focus area. We started to identify what stakeholders and rights holders we need to include. We talked about translation and whether or not we can find some funds to translate our survey, which is what we're going to implement. We'll do our best to do that. I know we can do French and English and probably Inuktitut, but we'll have to see what else we can do. And then we're going to engage in an iterative survey. So 2 rounds of surveys, which I'll talk about here. The first round is really open, and we're just trying to gather as many ideas as is possible. And that's where we're at right now. So we're really hoping that we could give you the link to the survey right now. But of course, the ethics process takes longer than one would hope. We should have clearance within the next 2 weeks. So by the time we're in Actuary, we should be able to release the link. But of course, ethics is very important. And then we're going to do a second survey, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I know this may not be super exciting, but here's a sneak peek at the survey that is in the ethics process right now. And as Heather said earlier, there's some text in here that we co-generated as a team when we were in Scotland to really explain our research, our priority area and what we're focusing on. And essentially, we're looking to understand knowledge gaps and research needs to fill those gaps. It's simple, and sometimes simple is better, and it's really fairly straightforward. And then there's demographic information. And that information, the demographic information, is solely being used to make sure that we have inclusion across different EDI categories, so that the results of the demographics are sort of less important than just ensuring an appropriate level of inclusion from this. Now, the second survey, what happens is, as a team, we've already got, as Heather said, we've got different groups. So we've got an analysis team already put together. And that group will be analyzing all of the information that comes in using fairly standard constant comparison coding. And after that, we will end up with information on knowledge gaps, which we will park and put into the report. And we'll also end up with a whole bunch of research needs, research ideas. And from those, we're going to feed those ideas back out to the community in a second survey. So that second survey is going to give a certain research idea, say priority area. Maybe it's community-based monitoring of X and Y species. And then that's going back out to the community to evaluate the level of priority, whether or not that's a feasible approach, whether or not it's achievable within the time frame that we have of this ICARP process, because these things matter. Sometimes you might have the most pressing priority that ever existed, but we might know that it's not affordable, or it may not be achievable or feasible. So we've got these feasibility criteria, and then basically we do a bit of a weighted criteria analysis, and that helps us identify those priority areas that will kind of sneak to the top of our list that we will then present at the end. So we end up with something like this. We can display it in whatever way we want, but we end up with a certain level of point of agreement on whether people believe that this particular item is achievable, feasible, etc. And we also examine the level of consensus. If we've got a medium and high level of consensus, then we know we're fairly comfortable. If we have a low level of consensus, we might dig in a bit more and find out why. Sometimes low consensus doesn't mean it's not a priority. It just might be a less popular or different suggestion. So we'll dig into that a bit more, and we'll end up with something like this. And potentially these, the ones that are highly feasible and of high priority will fall in this quadrant, and potentially those are some of the ideas that we will push forward in a final report. This is just a spider. You can see I like figures and things, so this is just a spider diagram of ensuring that we have appropriate inclusion. So these are mock data. It's not real. And the last thing I want to say, just before we open it for discussion, and Varvara is gonna lead that, is that we also are going to include quotes and stories. So the Delphi approach, as you can see, inevitably it ends up being a little bit quantitative. The best approach we feel is to ensure that we also have qualitative approaches. So looking at the literature, talking to people, including information that we get from people through these workshops, webinars, and etc. So it'll be, a mixture of things. We're not only relying on the survey. The survey is one, a large tool in our tool belt that we're going to use to try to get to the end. And back to Heather's comment, and the purpose is simply to ensure inclusion. And that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Jackie. I just wanted to add one small thing as well. The diagrams are really important, specifically those spider diagrams, because remember, we're reaching consensus. However, the spider diagram lets us dive in and say, is something considered a low priority because it's only Indigenous respondents who have identified it? Or is something considered a low priority because only the government people have identified that they want that, but nobody else in the communities considers that a priority? And that's a really unique approach to be able to separate those out. And that's one reason I find this such a great way of trying to quantify qualitative in a way that allows it to be equitable and lift up voices that might usually be seen as, oh, there's less about this. However, that's not necessarily true. Okay, and now we're going to pass off to Varvara to help lead discussion. And we welcome you. Do you want people to raise their hands, Varvara, or drop in the chat?
Sure, whatever comfortable is that. And thank you, Heather and Jackie, for a presentation, and as we perfect timing. So that's how we agreed to do 30 up to 30 minutes of discussion, and probably our group is the biggest because we are kind of like an umbrella for all relationships between social ecological systems and humanity and stuff like that. So that's why I think for us it's important to use both approaches, and we plan to have yes, little maybe boxes with stories or as I said before, abstracts, so we can have your voices provided. So yes, and we have a discussion questions. You can all see them, and first thoughts and feedback on our approach. And please raise your hand, and I think Nina will help us to let you in as a unmute with questions. Yes, sure. So you may leave your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, or you may also raise hand and we will unmute you and yeah, let you speak out loud. It seems no questions on our approach, so we did a good job with explaining. So we can maybe pass to what does this group think are the key knowledge gaps in this RPT area. So if you have questions, yeah, so feel free to type in the chat or raise your hand, and we are happy to hear your thoughts about knowledge gaps. Yay, we have a
Okay.
caller.
Okay, I'm unmuting you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's been a really interesting presentation, and I missed a little bit at the beginning, so excuse me if I'm asking a question that seems silly. But I think when you're looking at knowledge gaps, how are you engaging with local communities as well as local scientists? I think that that's a really important thing that you know I found with the science I do, that it's much better to see what that they're the people that can tell you where the knowledge gaps are, I think. So I just wonder what you're doing about that.
Jackie, do you want to start with that? And I can jump in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Kath, I think that's absolutely true. And we spoke a lot about that. And so this Delphi survey approach that we're engaging in will absolutely go to communities as well. So we're going to rely on our RPT group, who then has networks all over the world, to try to snowball it out. And so we're not just aiming for academics, although we'll certainly include academics and government. But no, we'll be sending it to Indigenous organizations, who then often make choices about where they want to send it and who they want to fill it out. We'll also be sending it to community organizations. I mean, it's almost impossible to ensure full inclusion and everyone, and that would be overwhelming, but we're gonna do everything we can to make sure we've got those community conversations happening as well.
I also wanted to add a little bit, we do recognize that these ASSWs are not generally the most community inclusive aspects. The ASSW in Colorado is kind of a unique forum because it's a combination of Arctic Science Summit Week, this ICARP planning group, as well as the Navigating the New Arctic NSF funding stream. And that Navigating the New Arctic, I'm part of an Indigenous group there. We will be bringing some of our group as well, community members that are a part of that group. And really, I mean, I guess the opportunity at these groups, like Jackie's saying, is this networking to help broaden out the survey. So for example, I work in Alaska a lot, and there's the tribes, the regional nonprofits, there's all these different ways to get information out, as well as in person. While we open these fora in Colorado as well, we have a 2-day open door meeting just to get more feedback like this. So we're trying to create these spaces, but there actually really isn't funding for me there's no ICARP funding. This is all volunteer, I want to say, for the 3 of us here. There's no funding to take me to like a community in Alaska to do a listening session or anything like that. It's really if we're already there and we're able to do it.
I want to add, thank you for this question. And actually, that is our way. And thank you, Renuka and Nina, to set up this webinar, because ICARP IV process is really about community, right? So and that is our way to set up research priorities and opportunity to provide voices from local scientists or local people and Indigenous communities, because of course, traveling to Edinburgh, for example, I didn't go, right? I didn't have opportunity to get a visa. or it's just simply a lot. So, and I understand that we are asking people to do a volunteering job, but at the same time, I strongly believe that that is our chance to pivot science agenda for next 10 years in a way that community wants, right? So, and that's why we need you to participate and spreading it out as much as possible, because yes, three of us are just volunteering and doing it. I guess in a strong belief that it's a good job, right? It's something that should be done. So yeah, that is our best way of doing it. Thank you. So we are getting more questions. Yay!
Kath, did we answer that, or did you have any before we move on? Sorry, was that good for you, Kath?
Yeah, that was really interesting, really good. Sorry, I forgot to put my hand back down. I've done it now.
Thank you. We have a question from Virginie, and Virginie, do you want to ask this question yourself, or you want me to read it?
It looks, Varvara, that she clarified further. I'll read it out loud.
Yeah.
She's wondering what is being done now, where we are in the plan. She's not sure what's being done, as she registered for some tasks but may have missed taking part.
Yeah,
and
so
I have the sound. Sorry, I didn't know how to have the sound. Yeah, I wasn't really a question. There was just because Heather replied. So, but okay, I guess you answered my question. Sorry.
Yeah, but I have taken part in RPT discussions in Edinburgh and wanted to know what is the state of the art. I think that I'll try to add a comment in terms of our approach, and I became a co-chair recently, so and I can share my experience and my thoughts on how to participate. And for example, my area is Indigenous economies, and my idea was to write an abstract and do a subgroup of people who do work on Indigenous economies and write it down, submit to RPT3 and to ICARP process. And yes, so I think that we don't have, it's not possible for three of us to navigate all of our group, right, themes. So please feel free if you think that you can do a subgroup on the art and have either meeting or webinar or whatever. Just yeah, take initiative and it will be included. Okay, thank you. Vera, I was also wondering, there are so many knowledge gaps. So the question is rather how we prioritize which ones are the most pressing. Yeah, thank you. So do you want to ask this question, or we just answer?
Yeah, Heather's been trying to answer some of the questions in the chat ongoing. Thanks, Heather. And essentially, there's a couple questions about knowledge gaps versus the priorities and how, and some really important questions about how we're going to do this, because there's so many things. And that's, that's what we've been struggling with for a while. But essentially, the second survey helps us to prioritize. The end goal is to understand the knowledge gaps, but then to really come up with the research priority areas. So we're not going to be prioritizing the knowledge gaps. We're just identifying the knowledge gaps. But we are going to then try to prioritize the actual research suggestions that are designed to respond to the knowledge gaps. So the research priority areas, ideally, the reason it's an iterative process, so the knowledge gaps exist, but what research do we need to do to eliminate those knowledge gaps or mitigate those knowledge gaps? And it's those priorities, those research areas or things that we want to do that are going to be prioritized through the second survey. So that's how we're going to do that. And of course, considering feasibility, consensus, inclusion, all of those things. And Anne Barker also has a question about this and how we're gonna do this and the wording. I can tell you we spent lots of time on the wording with the survey group. It's really hard, and you know, if you word it poorly, then your results are poor. So we hope we got it. We're trying to gather as wide a range of knowledge gaps as possible. So, and I mean, because we're this social ecological group, as Varvara said, I think that we would include, you know, mostly research gaps, but also those mobilization gaps as well. How do you translate research into solutions? So we are focused on discovery-based science, but also solutions-based science. So I'm not sure if I've answered the different questions, but I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. So we got a lot of questions. Oh, Vera raised a hand. So maybe Nina, you could unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
So yeah, thank you for your answers. And my clarifying questions is probably about survey, since not many people. No, maybe it's my bias. It's just, yeah, there is always a barrier who would answer the survey and who would not, and who would not even have access to the survey. By the end of the day, the decision is made by funding agencies. And do you have plans how these priorities then will be delivered to funding agencies so they would try to address these knowledge gaps? Thank you.
That's a good question, and we were talking before presentation actually about how it's important to have a conversation with funding agencies, and I honestly don't have an answer right now, but I think that we take your question to ArcticNet to discuss with co-chairs and International Steering Committee, because it's definitely something what is important, and yeah, so
it's partly I think the ICARP process, the IASC team, in some ways that's their goal. And a big report is being produced. We have the template outline that Gerlis provided us. And my guess is that report will become available to different funding agencies. But as Varvara said, exactly how we might ensure that relevant information gets to the various funding agencies probably can be discussed in ArcticNet.
There's a yeah, thank you so much. And I'm going through questions, and I see Begona has a raised hand, but I'll try to go like through questions. First asked, first answered. When are surveys scheduled to begin? Which countries will be included, and what would be considered a representative sample size? JK, it's probably for you.
Sample size, yeah. This is a great question. I mean, it's always tricky. And to the previous speaker, yeah, surveys are one tool, and some people won't answer a survey if they got paid $1 million. So we have to make sure that we use other inputs as well, which we will. But for the survey, we're going to go as wide as possible for round one. The whole idea of a Delphi approach is it's an iterative approach. The first round is meant to be very open, very wide, to gather as many possible suggestions that we can. The second round, well, in the first round, people are asked if they want to participate in the second round. So the second round typically has a lower response rate. And according to the literature for Delphi, you know, as long as you have between 12 and 20 responses on your second round, you're good. But that I don't think we're not aiming for that. We're aiming for something much, much higher because of the global scope of this. So I don't know what the response rate is going to be. It's not something we can calculate perfectly with confidence intervals because the sample group is so broad and so big. So we're just going to basically go for as many as we possibly can, and we'll keep it open as long as we can. But again, we're not only relying on the survey data, we're also relying on people's inputs through the various ICARP and IASK processes, and webinars and meetings and things. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Karen Wood, Ramesh Urgent, Karen Wood, and Rame is here listening with me. I'm a Ramesh mother, and we co-founded an aging advocacy business community venture in 2010. I'm in my 80s now, pivoted at 60 with a master gerontology and relocated to Fairbanks in the early 2000s, earning a couple of degrees with UAF. I felt very lucky then to commit to respect communities of elders in training. Two, if you will allow me that this morning. There's been a lot of discomfort and trauma associated with such work, and thank you for the care you take. Thank you so much for sharing this, and I understand the burdens you're taking to work with communities, and it's really hard to work. So, Heather, do you want to answer to this comment?
I think it's more of a comment than a question, but thank you, Rami and Karen, for joining. I think that she's appreciating that we are doing this work and trying to be inclusive. And I think it is an important reminder of the discomfort and trauma, and recognizing that in being inclusive in the survey. And I think that's one of our challenges in regards to like language translation. English is a colonial language for many people. How appropriate is it to ask questions in that? But the challenges of translating that paragraph versus just translating the question are also very challenging. We don't have any funds to fund someone to translate it. It would have to be someone volunteering. So we've run up with a lot of equitable challenges, which really speak to what Vera is saying of what funders will support. This is a free endeavor of scientists and community members volunteering their time, and how much can we really dive in when we don't have the ability to compensate people or in that way of ethical and equitable engagement, I guess.
But I think that's very important to include your voices and then address that exactly questions to funding agencies and decision makers, because we will advocate to promote these voices. I'm pretty sure that Heather and I have been doing it already and talking a lot about how it's unfair to ask from communities to participate in something that is not compensated. But we are on our journey to achieve it, but it takes time and probably won't be necessarily feasible to do by 2025. Bigona, I know that you texted that your Wi-Fi signal is not stable, but if you are here, you can raise a hand, or I can just
Bagona, I've also tried to drop some resources in the chat of a few different research membership groups. I don't know if you can hear us, that you might be able to join, and also some of the communities in Alaska that are facing relocation. I'm not sure if you're trying to talk to researchers or talk to community members, but I would suggest, I'll put this in the chat in case you can't hear me, the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium is involved in some of this work around climate change and community movement for health.
Yeah.
Sorry, just I don't know if I'm interpreting this right, and Bagona, it looks like you can now speak if your Wi-Fi signal allows, but I think maybe the way I'm reading this is this highlighting that this is an important area and that we need to pay attention to in research is that, you know, these major impacts that are occurring in communities. I mean, even the hurricane that's going to come through the US shortly is big, and this is happening in Canada too. Clavic floods every year and with coastal erosion. So anyway, we'll certainly put this in the list of areas to focus on.
Yeah, I want to add that we are in an interesting time because there's a polar year, right? It's International Polar Year. Is in development, so they are preparing for it. And I think that the ICARP summit, we will discuss how ICARP IV findings, will be transferred to IPY, and there's definitely a linkage between South countries and the Arctic, so that will be two. There is one, and also at the ASW, there will be early career polar summit. So, and you definitely can apply for, and we are live now for applications. So there will be a lot of discussions, I think, on climate change and how to link both poles together. So that might be also one of the way how to participate. And definitely we just started to think about International Polar Year. And I think that yeah, so we probably need to focus more on International Polar Year after ICARP summit. So yep. Thank you, Heather, for dropping this. Yes, and I saw the in our comments that we have early career scientists here, so maybe you will be interested in joining early career summit this year as well in Boulder. And yes, ICARP is very North American. I think it's just because it's in Boulder, Colorado, and local institutions are American. We are kind of tended, but it's good to have our audiences here from Europe, and it's not because yeah, I think it just how our network works, but we would love to have more representation from European countries.
And actually, maybe while we have a small lull, we're really hoping that all of you here can help us get the survey distributed as widely as possible. So within your networks, outside of North America, all over the world, you know, Arctic nations, non-Arctic nations. So if Heather put her email in the chat earlier, so if anybody wants to join our group, it's an open group, it's an open call, and we would, yeah, we welcome all your support, help, thoughts.
I'll drop. Oh, I'll put again the my email. You would just email me, and you would CC the info@IASK email. I'll drop that in at the bottom of the chat again, so you can see that.
So we have our. I don't see more questions, but we have what are research priorities that need to be established to fill key knowledge gaps. Again, if you would like to answer these questions or you would like to chat with us, I'm not sure about our time allocations, but definitely reach us out, email us, and with your ideas. And we are going to distribute survey as soon as ethics will be cleared out, and yeah, please help us out to spread it, and we will be happy to yeah, to talk to you more. I have 5 more minutes if that's helpful, but if no questions, I think that we're very efficient today. Yes, thank you very much. Just to remind, on the ICARP IV process website, so you have an engagement page, and there is all kinds of links to different RPTs, how to connect with the process and how to engage with the process. And also there's a link to drop the resources. So if you would like to share something and to let the RPTs and the other people know of some resources, so please go to the website and share your links there.
Just as a follow-on, I've added the link onto the chat box, so if anyone's interested, please pick it up from there.
And of course, thank you, Nina and Renuka, for an opportunity to have this webinar and be connected to people who are online now, and maybe someone will watch it in recording, and please reach us out, and hope to see you soon somewhere in the Arctic. Next one, Iceland, but maybe somewhere else before Boulder.
Yeah, the thanks go to Nina from my side, actually. I only kind of put my hand up to set this webinar series up, and Nina's the one who's ended up implementing it. So all thanks
you,
to
Nina.
Nina.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all for carrying out this webinar. Super useful. And we're 2 minutes before time, but I think we can close the webinar today. So I hope you all have a very good day. Please don't forget to catch this webinar online if you have missed it today, or any of the other RPTs webinars, which are already online on both the EPB's channel and also on the ICARP and IASC. Okay, we can, so we can check. So just hold on, please, Heather. Thank you very much. Bye-bye to all of the attendees.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Merci.